Vladimir Putin's spokesman has accused Washington of masterminding the alleged Kremlin drone attack, saying it was targeting the Russian president. The Kremlin has accused the US of masterminding yesterday's alleged drone attack, which it claims directly targeted President Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's denied any involvement, and Washington has suggested it may have been staged to justify a military escalation of its invasion. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the denials as totally ridiculous. He said in response, Russia would take what he called thoughtful, balanced steps in line with the interests of our country. The EU's foreign policy chief suggested the apparent attack could lead to a further mobilization of Russian troops.
We call Russia not to use this alleged attack as an excuse to continue the escalation of the war. This is what worries us. What worries us is this can be used in order to justify more conscription of people, soldiers, more attacks to Ukraine.
A Russian oil refinery closer to the border was also hit by suspected drones, and in Ukraine there were strikes on Kyiv and Odessa. Fears over further drone assaults have led some Russian mayors to cancel forthcoming May the 9th victory parades. On an unscheduled visit to The Hague's International Criminal Court, Volodymyr Zelensky made an unequivocal plea to the international community to ensure a tribunal tries the crime of Russian aggression.
It's the strength of freedom and of law which must work to the full of ensure justice, not hybrid promises instead of human rights. Real freedom, not hybrid impunity and symbolic formalities, but full-scale justice.
And in the meantime, clarification of NATO's role.
But anyway, we're realistic. We know that we will not be in NATO during the war. But during the war, we want to get very clear message that we will be in NATO after the war.
Russia cannot win this war, and it must be held accountable for all the crimes of aggression and the injustice it is inflicting on the people of Ukraine day after day in this horrific war.
The presidential convoy left the court, its message safely delivered that Ukraine must see justice and freedom in the future.
Fighting is continuing in the Sudanese capital, even as a new 7-day truce was supposed to come into effect. The UN wants hostilities to stop so humanitarian aid can get through to desperate trapped civilians. Speaking in Nairobi, UN Chief Antonio Guterres reiterated all parties must put the interests of the Sudanese people first, and that means peace, a return to civilian rule, allowing for the development of the country.
Khartoum is in turmoil. Darfur is burning once again. And the UN Refugee Agency has already affirmed that more than 100,000 people have fled and 800,000 people might flee the country in the coming days and weeks. The fighting needs to stop, and to stop now.
At least 550 people have been killed and some 5,000 wounded since violence between warring generals broke out last month. Tens of thousands of Sudanese have fled to neighboring countries, while foreign governments have scrambled to evacuate their nationals. The latest are these families trying to board a ship heading to the coastal city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. The failure by both sides to abide by their commitments in efforts to end the fighting has brought international condemnation.
Israel says that it has killed 3 Palestinian men suspected of being involved in the shooting near a West Bank settlement last month. Security officials said 2 of the men were members of the militant group Hamas, while the third allegedly assisted in the shooting. The Israeli military said a gun battle erupted when their forces entered an apartment in Nablus, where the men were located. At least one of those killed were brought to a hospital. The men were suspected of being behind an attack that killed a British-Israeli woman and her 2 daughters. They died when a gunman opened fire on their car near a settlement close to Hamra.
Spontaneous memorials have sprung up across the city of Belgrade as the Serbian capital mourns the 8 children and a security guard killed in a school shooting spree by a 13-year-old student suspect. The attacker also wounded 6 other children and a teacher before turning himself in to the police.
To nije smjelo da se desi, dešava se, ali ljudski je reći, žao nam je I grozno.
Srećnici da je vaše dete živo, ali opet stavljam se u ulogu tih roditelja koji su decu izgubili zauvek. Ne znam šta da kažem. Ovo nije u duhu našeg društva I ovo se prvi put desilo.
The young age of the attacker and reports that he planned the killing have shocked everyone and provoked discussions about gun control and the law. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić is leading the way, proposing several new measures, including a moratorium on the issuing and carrying of weapons and the revision of all existing permits.
Dečak je u svojoj izjavi pokazao da je planirao sve. On je to na čudan način objasnio. Što ne možete da objasnite nikome od onih koji su izgubili svoju decu.
The suspect is alleged to have used his father's guns, both of which had legal permits. The boy's parents have been arrested. A recent survey put Serbia in 3rd place in a league table of firearms in circulation, with 39 weapons per 100 inhabitants.
Czech police say 8 people died overnight in a fire in the country's 2nd largest city. The fire broke out at 2 o'clock in the morning in Brno. Czech public television said those who died were thought to be homeless people in a shelter. The fire engulfed several containers on the edge of an apartment complex before being extinguished. Police and firefighters are investigating the cause of the blaze.
Thousands of protesters marched through the streets of Budapest against a new law that could add hours to a teacher's working week. The bill could remove educators' public service status and increase their workday by 4 hours. Some demonstrators say that the challenges faced by the country's schools stem from society as a whole.
Nincs kultúrája nálunk a szolidaritásnak, akár csak azért, mert elég sokáig tartott nálunk a kommunizmus, se a szolidaritásnak, se a demokráciának, se a jogállamnak nincsen egy még évtizedes hagyománya sincsen ennek az egésznek, mert jelenleg is csak egy áldemokrácia van feltartva, hogy az EU-tól kapjuk a pénzt.
Thousands say that they would leave their job if the bill came into effect, impacting students in the country that is already facing a teacher shortage.
Elegem van abból, hogy konkrétan az összes ismerősöm, mindenki, akit szeretek, megy ki külföldre, mert ez az ország nem tudja azt megadni nekik, ami kell. És nincsen ennek vége, mert a kormány nem enged.
This is not the first mass protest in support of teachers in Hungary, as many make less than supermarket cashiers. Around 40% of teachers are over the age of 50. And Hungarian students perform well below the EU average.
A bevezetni tervezett státusztörvény ellen legutóbb április 24-én volt tiltakozás Budapesten. A demonstráló diákok ellen akkor a rendőrség könnygázt is bevetett a miniszterelnök hivatalánál.
Scuffles broke out again on Wednesday evening, with some protesters clashing with riot police.
On the day of his coronation, the carriage of King Charles III will pass by the statue of another British monarch, Charles I, who was executed in 1649. At that point, hundreds of Republicans will gather to show their opposition to what they say is a corrupt institution.
We will be at least 1,000 people here, probably more, with a lot of yellow placards, a lot of large flags and a lot of noise, and we'll be chanting "Not My King" as he goes past. There'll also be speeches, probably some music, and we'll try and keep the atmosphere light, but our aim is to make it impossible to ignore.
According to polls, the majority of Britons still want a monarch, although support is dwindling in some sectors of society.
We do see, as has been historically, actually younger people less likely to be supportive of a monarchy, but also today with higher numbers of ethnic minorities in our population, they're less likely to be favourable to a monarchy. Those located in London and Scotland, less likely to be favourable. And also we see that the middle classes, those in the middle income groups, they are more likely to be slightly more favourable towards a republic.
Regardless of their views on the monarchy, many say this is not a time for pomp and ceremony in a country in crisis where many are struggling to make ends meet.
Rain is conspicuously absent in the Pyrénées-Orientales in the south of France. After several months of drought, authorities will adopt restrictive measures on water use. Some businesses, such as this car wash, could be affected.
On voit ces derniers temps là, beaucoup d'incendies sur le secteur, donc il vaut mieux garder toute l'eau disponible pour les pompiers.
Jean-Marc Formanti, owner of this car wash, is concerned and has prepared arguments to defend his business.
Là, le lavage que vous avez vu, 110 litres d'eau. Un particulier avec un tuyau d'arrosage, 300 litres d'eau. Si on encourage le lavage sauvage, pour la nappe phréatique, c'est 3 fois plus de dégâts.
In some parts of the Ain region in eastern France, car washes have already been ordered to close. This sector consumes